The first snapshot for Minecraft 26.3 brought us new pack versions with plenty of news for commands and custom worlds. My name is Slime, and this is a showcase of the news. Let's start with slot sources. They used to be quite a limited concept, but are now connected in more ways through commands. Another change is that you can now also define custom named slot sources in data packs. This is done by placing files in the slot source folder in a data pack, and for once, these files can also be reloaded using /reload. There's also a new reference slot source type, which can be used to reference these new named slot sources. The slot range slot source type can now use container as its source, referencing slots in a container or inventory provided through the loot context. This is now also the default value for the source field. And the contents slot source type is no longer restricted to selecting only non-empty slots. So what are the new ways slot sources can be used? For that, we'll need to get into the changes to commands. The item command now takes a slot source as an argument anywhere where you specify a slot. The old format still works, with the names being shorthand for built-in slot sources. The slot source can be the name of a custom slot source from your data pack as well, or an inline definition of a slot source. These slot sources can target multiple slots, but in case the command affects fewer slots, the first targeted slots are used. For instance, using the item replace command to replace a range of slots with a single item will only replace the first item, whereas using it to replace a range of slots from another range of slots will replace as many as possible. You can now also source items from multiple entities at once. The selector is no longer restricted to a single entity. In this case, the slot sources from all selected entities are concatenated. There's also a new item fill command, which works similarly to item replace, but rather than stopping when the source slot source runs out, it will instead repeat from the start of the slot source. In the most simple case, this means you can use item fill with a single source item to fill multiple slots with the same item. The new item override subcommand is similar, but always operates on the full target range. If the source slot source runs out of slots, the remaining target slot source slots are instead cleared. Execute if or unless item now also takes a slot source as its argument instead of a slot. There's also a new execute if or unless slots subcommand, which counts the number of slots from a given slot source are present on an entity. There are also fixes to the give command in this version. When the number of items is above the limit, it will now error instead of successfully returning 0. The success message is now also fixed for multiple players as targets. The results of some other commands have also been updated, with the team, join, and leave commands now returning how many entities switched teams, and many other commands no longer reporting unaffected entities in their result outputs. The NBT component used in raw text messages now also has a restriction and will be resolved a maximum of 64,000 times. Some item component news. The provides pottery pattern component has been added, which describes which pottery pattern is stored on that stack. This comes together with a change to the pot decorations component, which now stores full item stacks and is now an object with 4 optional fields instead of a list. This same format change is also applied to the shards field in decorated pot block entities. Both these changes are part of a broader change to data drive pottery shards. There's a new decorated pot pattern registry with files containing a single field, asset ID, which points out a texture asset relative to the textures/entity/decorated pot folder. There are also changes to other data-driven registries. The instruments format now has an optional durability damage field. This can be set to a non-negative integer to describe how much durability is used up on each use. The use duration field can now also be set to 0 for instrument items without any cooldown. The armor trim format has also changed in this version. Asset name has been replaced by a palette field, which points out a palette ID to use for the material. The override armor assets field has been removed, and overrides are now instead defined in the resource pack equipment assets. More on that when we get to the resource pack changes. Some fixes for entities and their data. Custom player heads now render properly inside Sulfur Cube entities. You can no longer dismount an interaction entity by using a spear. And the glowing effect now works properly for block display entities that display end portals or end gateways. In particle news, there are new particle types. red poplar leaves, orange poplar leaves, and yellow poplar leaves. Let's turn our attention to custom world generation. 2 new data-driven registries have been introduced related to terrain materials in world generation. They are Material Rule and Material Condition. Material rules define a pipeline for selecting what block to place at a given position in the world. This was previously defined in the Surface Rule field in Noise Settings, but is now possible to define separately, and the Noise Settings field has also been renamed to Material Rule. These rules can also have references to elements in the Material Condition registry, which define conditions in the same format that was previously used inline in the Condition Material Rule type. There's also a new structure placement type in this version called Dimension Origin, which places a single instance of that structure at the origin of the dimension. The origin of a dimension is defined by the settings of the spawn target definition for noise settings-based dimensions, or the 00 chunk if that is not available. And there are also news for world generation features. The configured feature registry has been renamed to Feature, and the contents of the configuration field has been moved up into the top level of the file. There's also a new end podium feature representing the center podium of the end. It has a single Boolean field called Active, which defines whether the portal should be active or not. There are 2 vanilla instances of this feature that are now used by the game: End Podium Active and End Podium Inactive. Some of the placer types used by the tree feature have been expanded with the new options. There are new poplar trunk placer and poplar foliage placer types, together with a new shelf mushroom tree decorated type. The rule tests used by OR features and rule structure processors have been expanded to accept a new height match type with a min and max range, as well as a new all-of combination type. And lastly, in the datapack realm, there are a whole host of new tags in this version. The Cannot Be Dismounted by Item Use tag specifies which entity types cannot be dismounted by spears or items with similar components. The No Wolf Retaliation Damage type tag has also been added and prevents pet wolves from retaliating when that type of damage hurts their owner. There are new biome tags for which biomes has each type of the new abandoned camps. Plenty of new block tags as well, including a set of block tags related to motion blocking and height maps, as well as tags controlling where entities can teleport, what blocks a dolphin's jump, the blocks that trigger poplar leaf ambience, as well as what blocks block or are washed away by fluids, what causes ice to melt, and what blocks fire from spreading from lava. And there are a host of new collection tags for blocks and items. Turning our attention to the resource pack changes, in addition to all the new textures, models, and sounds for new blocks and items, all the armor trim palette texture have been moved, and armor trim material textures are now generated on demand instead of into the trim's atlas. The base palette ID is now specified in a new MC meta section called palette, which has a single field called base palette, specifying the texture ID to remap from. The item armor trim material textures are still generated with the paletted permutation sprite source as before, but the texture locations in palette key and permutations have been replaced by palette texture IDs. And finally, equipment assets now have a new optional trim palette replacements field, which contains a mapping from palette ID to replacement palette ID. And that finally is everything for this version. Thank you for watching. If these videos are useful to you, then please do hit the like button. They take a huge amount of effort and time to make, so I'd really appreciate the YouTube algorithm help. My name is Sliced Lime, and I'll see you next time.